Are the Buffalo Bills better off with Amari Cooper over Stefon Diggs? I'm exploring that and more today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Well, folks, welcome in. It is time for Herd Mentality, the weekly episode where you take control of the discussion, and we have some great things to get into, including our more trades on the way for Brandon Beane ahead of the deadline. What's the deal with scripted plays? What are the Bills going to do with Dorian Williams when Matt Milano comes back? Josh Allen hasn't thrown a pick yet this year, and some Amari Cooper discussion, and that's where we begin today. This one from Jonathan. Could you compare Stefon Diggs to Amari Cooper in terms of skill at this point in their career? It seems this trade and the Diggs trade can be combined to be Diggs for Cooper. And while the first game was great, I also noticed there doesn't seem to be much drama in Cooper's career. And if correct, provided his skill doesn't drop, he's already an upgrade for Josh Allen. So let's unpack this. And I shared this with our Discord channel last week when the Bills traded for Amari Cooper. And I've hinted a few times on the podcast that I've been a pretty big fan of Amari Cooper for a long time. And so I'm obviously very excited for him to be a Bill. And one thing that we did on Locked On NFL Scouting, and Kyle Krabs is the co-host of that podcast, we went through and we ranked our top 10 receivers in the NFL by trait. And the 5 traits that we chose to rank the receivers in were hands, yards after catch, route running, vertical receiving, and contested catch. And so some of this I already did, and it's kind of fun to consider that I did this before the Bills traded for Amari Cooper. So let me share with you how I compare Diggs to Cooper, and then also for any of the traits that I had them ranked in that podcast, I'll let you know what it was. So hands and yards after catch, I didn't have Diggs or Cooper ranked among the top 10 in the entire NFL. But if I have to compare it, hands, Diggs versus Cooper, I think Diggs has better hands. And for Amari Cooper's career, his drop rate's about double that of Stefon Diggs. And Cooper's had several seasons where drops have been lesser, but it's kind of been a thing with him. And Stefon Diggs is a player that isn't immune to a drop, but I think his consistency is just better. So Stefon Diggs takes the hands category. For yards after catch, I don't think either player is an exceptional player with the ball in their hands. I do think that this one goes to Amari Cooper. I think he's a bit more physical. He's more decisive, and I think he might be a tick more explosive. And so I give yards after catch to Cooper. Now, the other 3 categories, I had at least one of them ranked in the podcast that I just referenced. And so I'll let you know where the guys fell. And obviously that will decide who's better at each category. For route running, I had this very close. I had Amari Cooper ranked 10th in the entire NFL. Stefon Diggs ranked 7th. So a slight edge to Stefon Diggs, but I think the point here is that they're both excellent route runners, both top 10 route runners in the entire NFL. And that's such an important piece and such an exciting piece of what Cooper brings to this team. He can go get you a bucket. He can uncover against man coverage. He knows where to sit in zone. He can be available for the quarterback and separate in ways that was kind of lacking with the other perimeter receivers on this team. And so I have a slight edge to Stefon Diggs, but both upper echelon, top 10, right? Route runners in the NFL. What's interesting is that Kyle Krabs had Amari Cooper ranked 7th and he did not have Stefon Diggs on his list. So you can make a case that it's a push, but that's boring. We'll give Diggs the slight edge here on route running. But again, both upper echelon NFL route runners. For vertical receiving, I had Amari Cooper third in the entire NFL. He was one of the best vertical receivers in the league in 2023 with the Cleveland Browns. I had him third, and I did not have Stefon Diggs. I think as Stefon Diggs has aged, the verticality in his game has diminished. And you've heard that not just from me, but other people as well. And I didn't have Stefon Diggs ranked in the top 10, and I wouldn't. So I think there's a decisive advantage here for Amari Cooper in vertical receiving. And then for contested catch, I also had Amari Cooper as the number 3 player in the NFL, the third best contested catch wide receiver in the NFL. I did not have Stefon Diggs ranked in this category. So a very decisive edge. And I think that's one of my favorite things about Cooper is, man, just the game slows down for him at the catch point. Just very natural with his ability to position himself and go get the football and do so with people all over him. So he gets a lot of separation, but when he's challenged to make a contested catch, he's exceptional at it. Like I said, number 3 in the NFL in terms of how I stack them going into the season. So I have hands to Diggs, yards after catch to Cooper, route running slightly to Diggs, and decisively vertical receiving and contested catch to Cooper. And so pretty strong edge there for Amari Cooper when you kind of look at how this all stacks up. And it's not crazy to think about Amari Cooper and Stefon Diggs as similar players in the league and similar status. I mean, let's talk about their age and what they've done in the NFL. Amari Cooper turns 31 in June. Stefon Diggs turns 31 in November. And so Cooper's a younger player than Stefon Diggs. And they've both been productive. Cooper has played 147 games in his career. Diggs has played 143. Catches, Cooper 695, Diggs 852. Yards, Cooper 9,802, Diggs 10,410. 63 touchdowns for Cooper, 70 touchdowns for Diggs, 1,136 targets for Cooper, 1,233 targets for Diggs. And so Diggs has been slightly more productive. I will say that the quarterbacks that Diggs has played with is certainly better than Amari Cooper, where Diggs has either had Kirk Cousins or Josh Allen with like a season of Case Keenum in there. At 10 years, they're both 10 years in the NFL. Where Amari Cooper had 4 years of Derek Carr, and then he goes to Dallas and he gets Dak, but Dak misses like half of that one season. And they play 3 different quarterbacks, and then his time in Cleveland was Deshaun Watson for a decent amount of games, who's terrible. And then, of course, Joe Flacco, and then a half season with Jacoby Brissett. So I think you've had much more stability at quarterback for Stefon Diggs, which would explain the slight edge in production. But I do think it's worth pointing out just how different the personalities are. I said it on yesterday's episode, or the post-game recap against Tennessee, is that Amari Cooper in so many ways feels like the anti-wide receiver. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Wide receivers are different cats. They think differently. They act differently. They talk differently. And Amari Cooper just kind of flies in the face of what is a trendy, modern-day, upper echelon wide receiver. And so I think that's a good thing. I think that's a nice personality fit for this Buffalo Bills operation. And I don't think it's insane to think that the Bills are in better shape with Cooper over Diggs, especially when you consider that Diggs was entering year one. This was supposed to be year one of a 4-year, $96 million contract. So at a minimum, you have comparable players, but also really different people. I don't think it's crazy to say, yes, the Bills are better off with Amari Cooper than Stefon Diggs. Now, there was a lot of chemistry that existed between Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs that, Amari Cooper coming in under these circumstances cannot replicate. But again, it's not, I think you look collectively at this Bills wide receiver core, and I think it's better than last year's for sure, especially with Dalton Kincaid in year 2 and some of the verticality that he's showing, and Khalil Shakir, a little bit more seasoning on him, and not having Gabe Davis and Trent Sherfield and Deontay Hardy. The Bills wide receiver core is suddenly in a much better place than it was just a few weeks ago. Next one here from Nathan, who says, this is way too early of a question, but doesn't Amari Cooper feel like kind of a guy that we could sign back next season to help in the development of wideouts and still be a very valuable asset to the team? This is the guy who traded and publicly and loudly cheered for CeeDee Lamb mid-trade out of Dallas. He's a champion of his teammates and seems to be pure Bills DNA. Yeah, I think extending Amari Cooper is absolutely a possibility. And remember, the Bills, on their books, this was year one of a 4-year, $96 million deal for Stefon Diggs. And so obviously we'll let the season play out and see how things evolve with Amari Cooper and Josh Allen. I like how they're off to a great start. But what does an extension for Amari Cooper look like? And keeping in mind, the Bills aren't going to be like brimming with cap space. They'll have a little bit more than they typically have. But they also have a lot of extensions to figure out, whether that's Greg Rousseau, Christian Benford, Khalil Shakir, Terrell Bernard. Those are some big decisions. Rasul Douglas is an expiring contract. You got to upgrade some spots on the roster as well. So they have a little bit of cap space, but I would like to think a lot of that goes right back into their own players. And so that obviously now includes Amari Cooper, who the Bills could extend. So what does that look like? Keeping in mind he's turning 31 next June. And so looking at some comparable contracts, not necessarily one for one, but players at this age at receiver recently signing extensions. I'll throw out 4 of them for you. Mike Evans signed this offseason, 2024 offseason, age 30, 2 years, $41 million. DeAndre Hopkins at age 31 in 2023, 2 years, $26 million. Tyreek Hill, age 30, 2024 offseason, 3 years, $90 million, so $30 million a season. And then Tyler Lockett this offseason, 2 years, $30 million. I would guess an extension for Amari Cooper is 2 years and around $20 million a season. So 2 years, 40, something like that, I think is probably where I'd expect an extension for Amari Cooper to fall. And I think that's very reasonable. And again, as things move along this year, this could become a pretty obvious choice for the Bills. And it's good to be back in this spot. It's good to feel like you have a dude at receiver that you want to have around and seems to really fit what's going on. And like I said, kind of the anti-wide receiver in so many different ways. All right, folks, coming up on the other side of it, we're going to talk about Josh Allen having not thrown an interception. We got that and more, so be sure to stick with me. Purchasing tickets for an event can be stressful, but it doesn't have to be, and it isn't if you have the Game Time app. Game Time is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. The app is awesome. It's easy to navigate. They have so many great features, flash deals. They give you a picture from your seat. When you buy a ticket, it goes straight to your phone, so you don't have to dig through emails to find it. And I love that they specialize in last-minute tickets. You can make the choice to attend an event and still get a great deal on prices right up into the day of the event. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike on other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is also the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy, so that way your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So check it out, folks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, folks, let's keep it moving here. The next one comes from Patrick, and a question very similar sent in from James. Patrick says, do you think Josh Allen's lack of interceptions this year is a direct consequence of not having Steph Diggs and Gabe Davis? He seemed to always try and force it to Diggs the last couple of years. I don't know, big coincidence that they leave and his interceptions improve tremendously. James says, What's the percentage of turnover-worthy plays that Allen has this year compared to last year? Is he being safer or is he getting luckier? I think all of that's true. I think he is taking less risks. I do think he's having better luck. I'll give you some data here to support that. But one thing that I will say about Stefon Diggs and Gabe Davis, there is something to Josh Allen running this offense without regard for making sure that Stefon Diggs is happy and that he gets his 160 targets a year. There's also the layer to this is that I think applies to Gabe Davis that's kind of overlooked. Josh Allen kind of spent the last 2 seasons with Gabe Davis trying to validate him as a legit number 2 receiver, and he's just not, right? A very limited player that's not a true number 2 receiver. And so it's not just the burden of Stefon Diggs being gone. It's also you're not constipating your passing offense by trying to pretend like Gabe Davis is an actual number 2 receiver in the NFL. And so that freedom to operate and just run the play has certainly led to less interceptions for Josh Allen. But, of course, whenever you talk about your top targets in the passing game, yeah, most of your interceptions are going to be thrown when targeting those guys. That's just by volume what's going to happen. And so Josh Allen threw 18 interceptions in 2023. Stefon Diggs was targeted on 4 of those, and Gabe Davis was targeted on 6 of those. And those were 2 of your top 3 targets. So you would kind of expect those numbers to come in there. Kincaid was actually the second most targeted. So you have Diggs at 159. You had Davis at 78. Kincaid had 90 targets, and Josh Allen threw 3 interceptions trying to target Dalton Kincaid. But I do think that you're exactly right that there's some luck involved here. In 2024, that's this season, Josh Allen's turnover-worthy throw rate is 2.6%. I pull that data from the Fantasy Points data suite. I think it's by far the best source for data. I trust everything that they do. Brett Whitefield, a friend of mine, runs the entire operation, and I'm very well acquainted with their process, and I believe in their numbers. And so they have Allen at a turnover-worthy throw rate of 2.6%, and, of course, 0 interceptions. In 2023, the turnover-worthy throw rate was 3.3%, so higher, right? Almost a point higher. And Josh Allen threw 18 interceptions. And he threw an interception on 3.1% of his throws. So, yeah, 1,000,000%. There's some luck involved here where, I mean, pretty much every interceptable pass that Josh Allen threw last year was picked off. So far this year, that hasn't been the case. And just to kind of point to what interception luck can mean, you know, like I said, Josh Allen 2023, 3.3% turnover-worthy throw rate, 18 interceptions. 2 guys that had higher turnover-worthy throw rates had way less interceptions. Brock Purdy, 3.6% turnover-worthy throw rate, 11 picks last year. Baker Mayfield, 4.1% turnover-worthy throw rate in 2023. He threw 10 picks. So, yeah, there is some luck involved, but I think that there's other pieces of the pie that make sense as to why that luck has improved. But obviously, there's always going to be a little regression to the mean as well. So, yes, some bad interception luck last year that's become fortunate this year, but also some reasons for that are worth mentioning. Next one here comes from Josh, a similar question also sent in from Drew. Josh says, Dorian Williams has seemed to grow up a little this season, and the game has slowed way down for him. If he keeps this level of play up, what do you see as his role once Matt Milano returns? Then, if he keeps this pace up and looks like a younger and cheaper version of Matt Milano, could you see the Bills doing a post-June 1st cut of Matt Milano next offseason? So I am very excited about Dorian Williams and his development. Don't get me wrong. Matt Milano is one of the elite linebackers in the NFL. I know we haven't seen him play in a while. He's coming off injury. But you're talking about a top 5 NFL linebacker in Matt Milano. So you can be excited about a young developing player that's going to be probably an important part of this defense for a while. But Matt Milano is an elite NFL linebacker. And so when he's ready, and that's a big part of my answer here. When he's ready, he's got to be on the field for 100% of the snaps, Matt Milano. Now, Dorian Williams and his presence and his development allows you to ease him back and not rush him. And maybe early on you can ramp Matt Milano up and have him play situationally and ramp him up as the weeks move along. But when he's ready to go 100%, he should play 100% of the snaps. And then if you want to get Dorian on the field, then it's on you to go 3 linebackers. But Matt Milano, a healthy Matt Milano that's ready to play 100% of the snaps, should play 100% of the snaps. Now, does this open up for flexibility with Matt Milano and moving on? Yes, but I don't know that there's a really good opportunity to do that unless you want to eat a bunch of dead caps. So I think Matt Milano is going to be on this team next year as well. And hey, we'll take linebacker depth. It's been a while since you felt good about what the Bills had behind their starters, and Dorian Williams is a good young developing player. But let's not forget that Matt Milano is literally one of the elite NFL linebackers, and when he's ready to go, he should be on the field 100% of the snaps. PV says, thinking back to the quote you shared from Greg Rousseau about the scripted plays being more successful before settling into base offense versus base defense, can you provide some more insight into the process behind the 10 to 15 scripted plays that teams use at the start of the game? If those plays are so successful, why don't teams script more plays or use those plays throughout the game? Why don't teams script the first 10 to 15 plays in the second half? In short, what is the advantage of scripting plays? So let's talk about scripted plays, something that Bill Walsh was the catalyst for. He's the guy that talked about scripting that first 15, and that's become a thing across the NFL. I think there's a bunch of reasons why you script plays offensively. Number one, you get your best players the ball. These are rehearsed plays, and so you practice this script of plays very frequently throughout the course of the week. You get confidence around those plays. One thing that I know about Joe Brady is that he asks the players, what do you like? What plays do you like? What early in the game, what do you want for me to get you the ball? And he listens to all of his top playmakers and incorporates those things. And when players make those types of suggestions, they have ownership in it, and they're going to want to make it work. Also helps you establish that rhythm because, again, these are your most rehearsed plays throughout the course of the week, and so you're ready to execute them. Also, another big reason, and I talked about this with John Fina and Jerry Ostrowski, a couple of former Bills players that have combined to start like 230-something games. We talked about scripted plays on the Overreaction Podcast Network on Tuesday night. And a big part of scripted plays is seeing what the defensive checks are and then what the other team's going to do to personnel match, which kind of dictates everything for the future, whether it's setting up your call sheet for the future with an understanding of what the checks are and what the personnel matching strategy is going to be, but also kind of allow you to create the matchups that you want as well. Also, you get some easy completions for your quarterback. So there's so many reasons to do it. And some teams do script the first 10 or 15 of the second half as well. So it's definitely something that happens. But then from there, it's about normalizing and adjusting. And one of the things that is also true is that defenses know the reasons for scripted plays. And I think part of Bobby Babbitt's strategy is saying, hey, I know that you're looking for tells. You want to see how we're going to personnel match? I'm not going to give it to you. I'm not going to give it to you right away. I trust that we'll be able to sort it out. I trust that we'll be able to score points, and you're going to get those checks and tells later than you're prepared for, and you won't be able to get to your adjustments quicker. I think that's actually part of the strategy, and John and Jerry also agreed with me. Some quotes here on scripted plays. This one from Andy Reid, and this comes from an article from Forbes about scripted plays. Andy Reid said, you put plays together, combinations that you kind of like and that you want to see how the defense is going to defend different formations. So it's a feeling out process, but you're still trying to score points. Mike Kafka, Giants' current offensive coordinator under Brian Daboll, said, quote, you're trying to give the defense a little bit something different. Maybe they haven't seen on tape, a subtle adjustment that now they have to combat during the game. So hopefully that gives you some insight on scripted plays and why they exist and why they're challenging for defenses and all of that. Mike says, other than kicker, if you could address another position via free agency or trade, what would it be? Any candidates come to mind? So the Bills have $2.1 million in cap space. That's not a whole lot to work with. So keep that in mind as you consider all of these different ideas that the Bills could explore. And, there's certainly onboardable contracts that you can figure out. I'm not saying it's not possible, but there are some limitations here. In terms of positions that I think are upgradable, I go to the defensive line. I think you could get an addition, whether it's off the edge, whether it's on the interior. to give yourself some more playmaking on the defensive line. And then I would also go to safety, where I think that it is upgradable from Damar Hamlin. I don't think Damar Hamlin's as bad of a player as a lot of fans do. I just don't think that he's a good starter, right? I think he's more of a depth player. And I think the Bills can be more dynamic at that spot. And I don't think Cole Bishop is ready to play. Houston was very clear that he's not ready to play. And I know that the X factor here is Mike Edwards. I like Mike Edwards a lot. I'm well acquainted with his game. I watched him at Kentucky. I watched him with the Bucs. I watched him with the Chiefs. I think he's a good player. I think he's versatile. I think he's physical. I think he plays the ball well. And I think he's good in coverage in a variety of ways. It's a very confusing situation to me. But Sean McDermott has answered that consistently the same every time that he's been asked about Mike Edwards. He said, look, we signed him to be a starter, and we thought that was going to be the case during the OTA session in the spring. He wasn't available with the shoulder injury. That created reps for Damar Hamlin, and Damar Hamlin, kind of won the job. And then they get to training camp, and it's supposed to be a three-way competition between Damar Hamlin, Cole Bishop, and Mike Edwards. And Mike Edwards has a hamstring injury that pretty much costs him all of camp. And so he's behind, and the Bills are comfortable with other options. And normally I would not say things like this, but if there's one position that I give Sean McDermott the benefit of the doubt with, it's safety. He's been right about it so many times throughout his career at multiple different places. And so there's a reason that he's not believing that Mike Edwards is the right option opposite of Taylor Rapp. And I would point to the resume of Mike Edwards. I'd point to the play of Damar Hamlin. I certainly feel like there's an upgrade opportunity, but this is a vision-based defense. And for whatever reason, they don't trust Mike Edwards to go in there and play. And for Damar Hamlin, he's the most experienced player at safety in this scheme. And so that level of trust weighs heavily. It has to. So I think that's the easiest way to upgrade. But if the Bills don't believe in Mike Edwards and you can still upgrade that spot, I think you could look potentially there for a trade option. But I'm not really counting on that, to be honest with you. I think if the Bills were to make another move, probably along the defensive line to give themselves another playmaker and another guy that can make some impact up front. But again, I'll be honest with you, I don't think, barring a major injury here before the deadline, which is, I think, November 5th, I'm not really expecting the Bills to make another trade. All right, folks, coming up on the other side of it, I want to talk about the rookie wide receiver class, a little Kaiir Elam conversation, Ray Davis, and more. So be sure to stick with me. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And FanDuel's got so much going on. Of course, the point spreads, the over-unders, the player props, those are really fun. I've enjoyed those. As you get to know the NFL this year, I think the player props are becoming a lot more manageable to win, but also the in-game betting is really fun. You can sit there and watch a game, and you can bet on, okay, on the next series, is a guy going to catch a pass, and you can kind of look at the odds there, or the result of the drive. And so the in-game betting is really fun, as well as all the fun stuff that you can get ahead of games. And this deal is incredible. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Check it out, folks. That's FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, folks, the next one today comes from Joe. Joe says, based on what you've seen so far from rookie receivers, who has shocked you the most and why? Can you redraft the first round of wide receivers? Based on this small sample size, are you happy with Keon, or do you wish the Bills would have moved up for a guy like Brian Thomas, who seems to be crushing it right now? Yeah, I think the guy that has surprised me the most is Brian Thomas. And if you listen to my analysis on Brian Thomas, I certainly recognize that he had a very high ceiling. I thought that based on what he was asked to do at LSU, he was just kind of a guy that ran in a straight line and was faster than everybody and was able to win vertically. And I wanted to see more to his game other than, hey, I can run in a straight line really fast and get behind people and catch the ball, because that's mitigated in the NFL. I wanted to see more complete route running profile. And I thought his game against Missouri, I thought his game against Alabama, both really kind of revealed that he needed some development. He's been unbelievable. He's been so good for Jacksonville and very quickly showcased different ways that he can contribute. And so I think he has been tremendous. And I guess in hindsight, I would rather have him than Keon Coleman. So I think you're asking, would you rather have Keon Coleman and Dwayne Carter or Brian Thomas? I think there's probably a strong case to be made, Brian Thomas. But that doesn't mean I'm not satisfied with what the Bills have in Keon Coleman and Dwayne Carter. And so I think the Bills still come out good, right? But Brian Thomas looks like he's going to be a problem in the NFL. So would a redraft be different? I'm not sure it would. I think Harrison's still the first receiver off the board, even though he hasn't been great for Arizona. Neighbors has been terrific for the Giants, had a 2-week concussion deal. Rome Odunze seems to be doing well with the Bears. Then you had Brian Thomas at 23. I'm sure Brian Thomas goes higher than 23 in a redraft. Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs, I think he's been extremely underwhelming. Everybody lost their mind that he was untouched on 2 touchdowns in week 1 and has really kind of been underwhelming since. He's getting beat up by press coverage, and everything with him seems to be manufactured. Not a guy that's really been able to win on his own. And so I guess everyone can stop losing their minds that the Bills gave the Chiefs Tyreek Hill on a platter. It's very silly discussion then. It's even sillier now. Ricky Pearsall goes 31. I mean, he got shot and missed a bunch of time. Obviously, that's an unexpected layer of the equation. He's going to get a big opportunity in San Francisco the rest of the way with Brandon Ayuk injured. He's now healthy. Xavier Leggett, maybe not 32, but I mean, what do you really know about Xavier Leggett in that disaster of a situation in Carolina? He's made some plays, but that's a joke of a situation. And then Keon's not a first-round pick. He goes 33 to the Bills. And so I think the two guys that you would make a case for to get drafted higher are Brian Thomas and Keon Coleman. So I think those would be your movers. And I guess the surprising thing is how good Brian Thomas has been so quickly. I think he always had this ceiling. I didn't know if he would reach it, but I didn't think it would be like an immediate situation, and it surely has been. And credit to Keon Coleman, who has come in and through 7 games, he leads the Bills in wide receivers and receiving, and has made some really big plays. And there's been good growth. I commented on that a ton in the All-22 review. So I think things are off to a good start with Keon Coleman. Dan says, I'm sure there's a ton of recency bias, but what do you believe the ceiling is for Ray Davis? James Cook looks like he could command a decent contract in a few years, and the Bills don't seem to want to pay running backs, understandably so. Do you believe Ray Davis could eventually take over as RB1? He's certainly a different type of back than James Cook, but has been solid so far, and his hands seem better than Cook's. Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell you this. I will not be in favor of the Bills extending James Cook. I think you enjoy his rookie contract, maybe 1 year on the franchise tag, and then you say, thanks for everything. There's just no good stories in the NFL when it comes to paying running backs. That literally never works. And the production is always easy to find, as evidenced by Ray Davis is a 4th-round pick, and we think that he can be an RB1. And I do. I have zero doubt that Ray Davis can be an RB1. He did it for 3 different programs in college. Very quickly commanded the workload when James Cook was out and produced a ton, and has a very complete skill set. I mean, physical between the tackles runner that can catch the ball, pass protection's better than James Cook. And maybe he doesn't have as much speed, but he's not deficient with speed. I think he's very well equipped to be an RB1 in the NFL. I think you would want to make sure he has a good complement and just draft some other guy in the 4th round in a few years and have your complement. I don't think this stuff is hard to figure out at running back. So no, I have no doubt that Ray Davis can be an RB1 for the Buffalo Bills. Scott says, is Elam a bust, or is it truly that CB1 and CB2 are playing so well? Just shake my head. Is it something not revealed on his play, or just can't get playing time? Christian Benford and Rasul Douglas are awesome. Like one of the best corner tandems in the NFL. There's no room for Kaiir Elam to play on the outside. He's not a safety. Like, people talking about him playing safety or slot corner, crazy. That's a crazy thought. That's not his game. He's a guy. Part of the reason that he's not coming in and being able to, start as a 1st-round pick is that the adjustment to zone coverage has just not been natural for him. And so you're going to play him at safety? Are you kidding? Like, that's such a silly idea. And then slot corner, I mean, come on, you're going to ask Kaiir Elam to fit the run and do all the things that Taron Johnson does. That's not going to go well either. So, and that's kind of one of his issues. He's never been a overly strong tackler or run defender, right? He's a man coverage corner with ball skills. So he's just not the best option for the Bills. And credit to Brandon Beane for getting Christian Benford and trading for Rasul Douglas, because he's built an awesome pair of corners. But for Kaiir Elam, I don't think he's a disaster. I just think those guys are better. And there's not really a spot for him, barring an injury. And I think next year he's in the mix to be the starter. And if the Bills let Rasul Douglas walk in free agency, which I think can happen, it'll be right there on a platter for Kaiir Elam to win the job. And he'll have 4 years. He'll be going into his 4th season. And I think that he will, be positioned well to use all the lessons he's learned to this point to position himself to start and see if he can be a long-term answer. But, you're talking about a zone-heavy defense where you have to play with vision, you have to layer coverage, you have to squeeze routes, you have to communicate. And that's a heavy lift for Kaiir Elam, who really didn't do that in college. And so if there was a mistake made in the process of drafting Kaiir Elam, it was probably assuming that he'd be able to come in and do all those things right away when he really didn't in college. But I think if you want to call him a bust, I'm not sure it's because of anything he's done wrong. It's been the Bills have had better options on the roster, and credit to the Bills for playing the better options, right? Sometimes teams are married to, this is a high dollar free agent, or this is a first round draft pick, and so we got to play him. No, play your best players, and credit to the Bills for doing that. Last one here from Spud, who says, one thing I've been thinking about for a while and I can't wrap my head around or figure out the answer. Hope you can help. When the Bills scouted A.J. Epenesa, they did so knowing that he was a heavy-handed power rusher at 270 pounds. What reasoning would they make to tell him to completely morph his body into a speed rusher and disregard all the traits and talent that got him to the NFL in the first place? Makes zero sense to me, both as a coach and someone who played football at a high level. Was he too slow? Well, I think you look back at it and say that it was a mistake. I think that really hindered the early development for A.J. Epenesa as he went through a body transformation and dropped like 20 pounds to get down to like 250. And yeah, of course, the reason that they did it was they wanted to get some more juice and some more explosion out of A.J. Epenesa. And yeah, he was slow. Anybody that watched him in Iowa said, I think that he doesn't really have much in the way of get off or burst, but obviously long arms, heavy hands, a power style rusher. He wins differently. And I thought the Bills were saying, well, if you can maintain a lot of those power elements, we can get you a little bit more explosive. We think that could be, the best version of you. And obviously they were wrong about that. And I think the timing matters here, right? That was the COVID year. So A.J. Epenesa is doing all this and not really being in the facility and having a normal onboarding process as a rookie, which I think maybe he lost a little bit more weight than they expected and they couldn't really monitor it. So, some different things layered together there that makes it look pretty bad. But I think A.J. Epenesa has become a good sub-package rusher for the Bills, makes plays, and eventually you kind of got to where you wanted to get. But yeah, in hindsight, it's absolutely a mistake. The reason was they wanted some more explosiveness, and I think they've finally thread the needle, and AJ's been playing his best football over the last few seasons. All right, folks, that's it for us today here on this episode of Locked On Bills. Coming up next, we start to focus in on this matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. Crossover Thursday. That'll be your next episode. And then, of course, my full primer getting ready for this unique Seattle team that is tough to figure out. But I'll do my best here over the next few days to get us ready for that game. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.